So the largest federal police union in America endorsed Trump in the 2024 election. That's a fact. And now they're engaged over his broad pardon. Enraged, I'm sorry. Yeah. They're enraged over his broad pardon of January 6th Capitol insurrectionists. But yesterday, Trump doubled down on his decision. Take a look.
Mr. President, you're a president who has long said that you back the blue, but aren't you sending the message that assaulting officers is okay with these pardons?
No, the opposite. No, I am the friend of police more than any president that's ever been in this office. They served years in jail. And if you look at the American public is tired of it. Take a look at the election.
So, some of the Capitol cops who were brutally attacked that day are calling him out for this also. Watch this one now.
I mean, it's outrageous, but not surprising. So today I went to the Prince William County Courthouse in Virginia, near where I live, to seek protective orders against the individuals, 5 of whom pled guilty to assaulting me.
I have not had any experience that would suggest he is a friend of the police. I think what he's a friend of is anyone who elevates his position and secures his authority.
So, question, does the Republican Party, Trump and his cohorts, do they need to make up their mind? Are they pro-police or not? What say you?
Well, I think it's more about crime in general and when people commit crimes, because veering off the January 6 pardons, there was one that was a pardon that Donald Trump gave that was kind of hidden among them. I don't know if you guys have heard of the man who created the Silk Road. His name was Ross Ulbricht. Mm-hmm. And he made a marketplace outside of the law enforcement, the realm of law enforcement, selling drugs like heroin, cocaine, weapons, pornography, it was called the dark web.
Yeah.
And 6 deaths were attributed to drugs that were sold on that website. He pardoned him yesterday. He had been sentenced without the possibility of parole in 2015. And the reason Donald Trump gave was, I just called the mother of Ross William Ulbricht to let her know that in honor of her and the libertarian movement, which supported me so strongly, I am going to release him. So right now we have him marching into schools and churches to get rid of immigrants who must be criminals, while he allows a criminal, because he's American, to just come out of prison. So it's,
Not because he's American. Because he's
no, because he's a supporter.
He's
a supporter of Donald Trump.
Right.
I think that the more important part here is not just police. It's, do we enforce our laws and punish people who have committed crimes, or do we not?
Yeah, and we should. Of course. I was particularly, as a former federal prosecutor, struck by the fact that he would pardon over 1,500 people, especially those that were violent towards law enforcement officers. I mean, we had at least 4 officers, I believe, 4 or 5 that were injured severely, not only physically, but also mentally. And I will say this, if there is no accountability, people will be emboldened to do more. When you are a prosecutor, you don't only prosecute someone because they've committed a crime, you also prosecute someone so that you send a message to society that this type of behavior is unacceptable in our society. What he has now said is that it is acceptable. And let me just finish with this. Pam Hemphill, who was a South Carolina resident, she served a federal prison sentence for her role in the riot. She said this in a video posted to X yesterday. I will not accept a pardon because that would be an insult to the Capitol police officers, to the rule of law, and to the nation. I pleaded guilty because I was guilty.
So it was not.
It wasn't
4 police officers that were injured. It was over 140 police officers were injured. Some had, one had an eye gouged out.
Yeah.
One had fingers cut off. They had spinal issues. They had heart attacks. 5 police officers later died.
That's right.
Some of them from suicide because of the demoralizing force of seeing themselves attacked by other Americans.
Yeah.
And so imagine what police officers who stood up that day are feeling today, knowing that the President of the United States does not have their back. He's got the back of his supporters who attacked them, who caused the death of some of their colleagues. This is outrageous. And I don't care how pro-Trump you are. I don't care how Republican you are. You have a choice. This is not about right and left. This is about right and wrong.
Yeah.
And I applaud the Republicans. I applaud the very few Republicans, including Tom Tillis, the senator of North Carolina, Susan Collins, who have stood up, Langford, who have stood up and criticized them. Just when we were coming down, I was hearing Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House that was attacked on January 6th, making all sorts of the most lame excuses, a human being. I mean, I just don't know how you stand up without a spine.
Okay.
It's got to be very, very difficult.
Alyssa.
I mean, there's no defense of these pardons. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, which is right of center, condemned it and said that this is disrespectful to police and law enforcement who protect us. I've become friends with some of the officers like Michael Fanone and Harry Dunn who were injured that day. It's terrible. It's beyond the pale. Here's what I'll say. One of the worst side effects of the Trump era is that because Donald Trump does so many things that are bad, we start to then say, well, other things aren't as bad that other politicians do because Donald Trump did something worse. And what happens is it becomes a race to the bottom. There's no whataboutism. This was just despicable that he would pardon these violent offenders. But I also want to have the conversation about the Joe Biden pardons. I think that it does matter. If we're living in a country where the rule of law matters, where no one is above the law, and where the precedents and the norms that we set matter and our institutions matter, I do think it warrants more scrutiny and more discussion. And there's a reason that even Democrats today are condemning the fact that Joe Biden, despite saying he would not pardon Hunter and he would not pardon his family, and condemning Donald Trump for considering blanket pardons the last term, then went in the final moments of his presidency and did it. That does damage to our democracy. And if we keep lowering the bar...
Joe Biden lost 2 other children. He lost 2 children.
And I've said
to be in the position and not protect the one child that he has.
Why his brother's wife, his sister, his sister's husband?
He's facing an abnormal president. He's facing
Alyssa,
someone
one question I have is
is on a vengeance tour.
So, Alyssa, whenever I see something like this, I try to parse out, like, how would I feel in their shoes? The problem with this is, in theory, I agree with you. Just like removing the filibuster weakens the system and all the things. So by itself in a vacuum, I agree. But knowing what Donald Trump is capable of and what he has said he'd do, a part of me wonders if, even at the expense of weakening it, I would say at least protect my family. So the counter, and I see that perspective, the counter to it, at the end of Donald Trump's first term, Matt Gaetz, Rudy Giuliani, and others allegedly asked for blanket pardons, and he actually declined to give them. Donald Trump stuck to some norms and didn't. He pardoned some other folks like Roger Stone. Now this gives him
like Jared's father,
who did serve time, though. He gave any future precedent they can point to directing staff and family members to commit crimes, and you will get a blanket pardon. It is saying
you know what's really appalling, and no way though. You know what's very scary though is that he's doing this. Joe Biden did that on the last day. Trump is doing this on day 1.
We have he told us he was going to do it.
And let me just say this. We have 4 years left of this, and the reason he's doing it is because he can.
Right.
Because there are no guardrails.
Can I just give some hope to people? The pardoning power is considered very broad, but it's not limitless. So for those people that feel emboldened that they can now do whatever they want, wherever they want to do it, a president cannot pardon a state crime. And so it's up to now our state attorney generals to be on the lookout.
I'll take that.
Thank you.